Hello everyone, I'm TFC328 here, and it's not about what you do differently, it's about what you do well. Let's talk about Avatar, The Last Airbender. It's been highly regarded for its memorable characters, excellent writing, and gorgeous animation. Its sequel show, Legend of Korra, while not as near universally adored as its predecessor, still had many of the things that made the previous show great. Strong writing, great characters, wonderful animation, and that was more than enough to keep me, and a lot of people invested, throughout its entire 4-season runtime. When it comes to Avatar's video games, however, they're easily forgotten at worst, and an easy way to inflate your gamer score at best. With Legend of Korra, that's what I'm here to discuss today. Made by well-known action game developers Platinum Games, best known for titles like Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising, their Legend of Korra game was certainly something that piqued my interest when it was announced. A game based on one of the best shows then currently airing being made by the developers of one of my all-time favorite games? That sounds incredible! I thought I was going to get a great experience even knowing that it was a quick little download title. It's Platinum Games! They're not perfect, but when they get it right, they get it really right. Let's see if they got this one right. So the game begins with the intro to the show, giving the atmosphere of your average episode of the show. A neat way to approach the game. We can then play the game proper in a tutorial sequence that teaches us how to utilize the various methods of bending. But Korra starts getting overwhelmed by these out-of-context enemies, and we then cut to a close pro bending match. Pro bending in this game doesn't have that much strategy to it. If you can dodge, block, and/or parry attacks and keep the metaphorical heat on your opponents, you should win no problem. There's a couple more pro bending matches peppered into the game, and there's a pro bending mode unlocked when you beat the game. But A, it still requires little strategy, even at the highest difficulty setting, and B, it's not multiplayer. I suppose you shouldn't throw multiplayer where none was needed, but at the very least, this was a pretty obvious missed opportunity to add a little more fun into the game. Whatever, the match is completed and we then see Korra get knocked out by an old geezer. This is our villain, and he's nothing to write home about. The other villains from the show had complex motives, ambiguous morality, and were more than powerful enough to give our title character a run for her money. They were just as compelling as our heroes. This guy, who's named Hoondoon by the way, is just a greedy king defeated by one of the past avatars and wants revenge. That's not nearly as interesting as an anti-bending revolution, the avatar equivalent to Bane, an oppressive leader trying to unite a shattered Earth Kingdom. Even Unalaq and Vaatu, the two villains from the show's weakest season, were more compelling villains than this old fart. He does manage to be a competent threat, however, as he managed to rob Korra of her bending during her blackout. Wait a minute. A hero that starts out really strong, but loses that power before the game actually begins. That makes me want a Metroidvania game set in the world of Avatar. Wouldn't that be awesome? Unfortunately, a forgettable antagonist isn't the only problem with this plot. For one thing, many of the characters from the show are not present. Mako and Bolin are only around during pro bending, Tenzin and his family are conveniently written out, probably so they don't have to pay J.K. Simmons more than they have to, save for Jinora, who basically fills the role of Navi for the game's runtime, and characters like Asami only get a passing mention.
Where did you get a mecha tank? Does Asami know about this?
For a story supposedly written by the same writers from the show, which was starting its 4th and final season by the time this game came out, there's really no story here. It's supposed to take place between the 2nd and 3rd seasons, but the narrative is nothing but a vehicle, a means to get Korra from one location to the next. Even the ending is basically nothing. I think Johnny described it best in his Mega Man Network Transmission review.
This is such an in-between game, it's not even funny.
As a result, I'm not even going to bother with a full plot summary, as there's nothing to summarize. But a minimal plot shouldn't be an issue if the gameplay's any good, right? Well, you start off with just your bare fists, which can damage enemies and helps emphasize the importance of dodging, blocking, and countering. But as the game progresses, you unlock the 4 elements of water, earth, fire, and air. Each has their strengths and weaknesses. Water has the most range, earth is slow but strong, fire is weak but fast and combo focused to compensate, and air is kind of a balance. It's not as slow or strong as earth, not as weak or fast as fire, and has some range, though not as much as water. You can't mix elements into various combos, but even if you could, the game vastly prefers relying on one powerful element like earth or air, especially when they're leveled up. Every element gets experience when an enemy is defeated using said element. Once it levels up, it gains new combos, abilities, more power, and more chi. Chi is the bar below Korra's health. It denotes how many levels of charge you can have, though charging leaves you open for a few seconds. That matters little when the attacks are practically screen-clearing nukes, especially air once it's been upgraded. I've moved through hundreds of enemies using Air's charged attack, and it's effectively crippled the game's concepts of challenge. It's even worse with the various items you get. Every defeated enemy or broken object gives you spirit energy that you can use in Iroh's shop to buy upgrades, more techniques for the elements, enhancements to Korra's strength, but a select few of these are hideously broken, particularly the item that makes Korra's health regenerate. It heals at a quick enough pace to ruin even more of the game's already dwindling challenge, as if the lack of enemy variety doesn't hurt it enough. You'll be fighting chi blockers, triad members, and giant mechas. Problem is, that's it aside from a few recolors that denote different strategies. This helps make every level in the game feel similar and tedious. Even when they introduce the spirit enemies in Chapter 6 of 8, you'll still end up fighting them so often that their variety wears off really quick, and you go back to fighting triads, chi blockers, and mechas again in the next chapter. This means that once you've found your element, you know, I really gotta stop using that. You're doing the exact same thing from beginning to end. Well, almost. There's 3 points in the game where you take control of Korra's pet polar dog Naga and Temple Run style levels where you have to position Naga in one of 3 planes as she runs to avoid taking damage before the level concludes. The elements you unlock can be used here, as water gives a shield, earth acts as a double jump, fire can destroy most roadblocks and enemies, and air does something, but it's unlocked right after the last one, so don't expect to know what it does. They're not too bad, especially since the checkpoints are very forgiving. It may affect your medal ranking, but then again, the medal ranks mean nothing aside from providing something that actually resembles a platinum game. They don't even have anything to do with the trophies or achievements. Lastly, there's a mechanic involving the avatar state, which is similar to Raiden's Ripper mode, for a more direct comparison. While it's a nice power high when it's introduced, the problem is, that's the last section before the final boss battle, so it's a waste outside of New Game Plus. At least Ripper Mode was introduced at the start of the longest chapter of Revengeance, and there were still a few more chapters left at that point. And not a single piece of music is memorable at all, which is very disappointing since even in Platinum Games' lesser titles, the soundtrack always kicked ass. Okay, I've been mostly negative throughout this entire review. So what do I like about this game? Well, the gameplay, as repetitive as it was still fun for me. The control was precise, and every hit felt satisfying to land, which is very important in a game like this. The elements are all effective and satisfying to pull off. Even if they can't be combined for even flashier combos, I feel that they provide enough gameplay variety where the enemy selection fails to deliver. If you're willing to mix them up, that is. The defensive mechanics are also solid, providing a small but fun layer of strategy, especially during the early game, and their importance never goes away until you get those game-breaking items. The items that aren't game-breaking are still solid enhancements to Korra's abilities and a helpful crutch in the early game. The game's visuals are a solid representation of the show's art style, and hell, there's alternate outfits for Korra to wear. Even better, a couple of these are unlocked by code. Whoa! Hidden secrets unlocked by in-game requirements and cheat codes? In this day and age? You know, I'm 19 going into 20 next month, and I feel old! And the bosses are fun to fight, even if every one of them save the last one is reused more often than a Seeker mold. Because of this, I feel I got my money's worth. And not a cent more. Hell, $15 may seem like a lot to ask for considering the game you're getting, but if you're willing to give it a try, it's on PS3, 360, PS4, and Xbox One. I don't think it's amazing, considering its undeniable problems and missed potential, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as the critical reception's made it out to be. I've played much better, but I've also played much worse. I'm TFC328, and you know what? Let's see what that Metro Nui place was all about.